Hi, I am Marcy Wiener-Lahav with my co-host Jen Levy. I am the director of the Adult Cultural and Judaic Department of the Betty and Milton Katz Jewish Community Center. The mission of the Katz JCC Adult Department is to maintain the independence and quality of life of the 2,000 plus, 60 plus members that come to our programming through enriching, engaging, educational, cultural, and most importantly, socialization activities. With my colleagues today, I see us all, social workers, doctors, lawyers, business owners, etc. We are all part of a continuum of care, looking at all the many components of our clients and members that we serve. With the stay-at-home directive, our older adults are really more isolated than others, given that many of them live alone. So it really is our responsibility to connect and keep people both physically and emotionally and mentally healthy and connected. As a result, many of us have moved our programming from on-site to online, and we will talk about that later because that's what this is all about, this particular program. And it's just important to note that our programming at the JCC is for people of all ages and all abilities, and we are here for you to connect. Without further ado, I would like to introduce my co-host, Jen Levy, president of J. Levy Associates. Her credentials are far-reaching with 25 plus years of experience. And I'm going to have to read my paper for this one. She's a licensed social worker, a licensed administrator and regional director of operations, developed a clinical blood lab that services skilled nursing facilities, VP of strategic planning for several profit companies, works with South Jersey Hospital System, sits on a state committee, just to name a few. But most important for today's purposes, she is the visionary behind these panels, of which there will be 5 totally, which we will talk to you about later. Jen, take it away.
Thank you so much, Marcy, for such a warm welcome and introduction, and to the Katz JCC and to Rod Koch Elder Law for taking this vision that I had and really helping to bring it to reality, especially during this unprecedented time. I'm really excited at this point to bring together all top experts in many different parts of our field, whether it be the community or the healthcare community at large, and to really help you navigate and have your questions answered as we begin to reintegrate back into the new normal. Without further ado, let me welcome our panelists for today's discussion. First, I'd like to welcome Rabbi Andy Green. He was born and raised in the LA area. He is a product of our Jewish day schools, youth groups, and family committed to the Jewish community and engagement in the synagogue life. Rabbi Green holds a bachelor's degree in mathematics and economics from UCLA, as well as a fellowship in public affairs from Carnegie Mellon University and a master's in rabbinic studies from the American Jewish University. Rabbi Green was ordained by the conservative movement Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies in 2015. Upon ordination, Rabbi Green and his family did move to Voorhees to serve as an associate rabbi at Bethel. Since 2018, Rabbi Green has served as the president of the Tri-County Board of the Jewish Clergy. He also served on the boards of the Jewish Community Relations Council and Jewish Federation of Southern New Jersey. Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. Carolyn Cavuto. Dr. Cavuto is a board-certified family physician with a concentration in geriatrics located out of the Mount Holly area. She's a graduate of the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine with more than 25 years of diverse medical experience. Additionally, Dr. Cavuto is board-certified in hospice and palliative care. Over the past 10 years, she has focused her practice on home care, working closely with patients with dementia, chronic disease management, and much more. Currently, Dr. Cavuto is Associate Medical Director of the New Jersey Burlington County Hospice for Bayada. Next, I'd like to welcome Robin Kaplan. Robin is the Director of Olive Home Care and Olive Day Center at the Jewish Federation of Southern New Jersey. Robin has been working in the healthcare industry for over 20 years. Robin oversees Olive's growth and development while assessing community needs and building community relations. Robin has made it her goal and ambition to ensure that seniors in the community receive the highest level of quality care. Robin has spent the last 8 years growing Olive Home Care. He has received a master's in public health and administration. She was born and raised in Pittsburgh and currently resides in the Cherry Hill area. And last but certainly not least, our moderator, Gerald E. Rothkopf, a practicing New Jersey and PA attorney. He is the principal of the Rothkopf Law Group, where he dedicates his practice to serving clients in the area of elder law, life care planning, asset protection, estate planning, and long-term care advocacy. Jerry Rothkopf is past president of the New Jersey chapter of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, past president of the Life Care Planning Law Firms Association, and former chair of the New Jersey State Bar Association Elder Law Section. Jerry Rothkopf has been and continues to be an outspoken advocate for the rights of the elderly and disabled. He writes for and gives presentations regarding regularly to attorneys and other professionals about elder law. He is a frequent lecturer, speaker, and author for the PA Bar Institute and the New Jersey Institute for Continuing Education, as well as nonprofit and professional organizations.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Oh, there's Marcy. All right, well, why don't we start our discussion? I'm facilitating, and hopefully within the next hour, we hope to have a very lively discussion and be able to address some questions from the participants, those listening as well. So thank you all. Thank the JCC and Jennifer for setting everything up. Thank you for Laura for doing things behind the scenes. So let's get right into it. Now, about a month ago, in the first of the 5 presentation of the series, this is the second, we discussed, we were still in the middle of the pandemic, and we discussed what have we been doing and how we've been reinventing ourselves, how we've been reinventing Judaism, what has the JCC been doing, long-term care communities, and the community at large. Now, since Governor Murphy, as most, if not all of you know, lifted the stay-at-home order just 2 days ago on June 9th, which was, I lose track, which is Tuesday, 48 hours ago. I guess the question then becomes, what does that mean? And it can mean different things to different people. And it actually, in some ways, and please feel free to incorporate, it actually makes things more difficult. Meaning it was vanilla or chocolate. It was yes or no before, either open or closed. Now we have more than strawberry. And how do we account? We have choices. So, which is both good and bad, because now it's actually more difficult. Because I would love to get a discussion based upon our own specialties, based upon our own experiences, what we do every day in the community. What does opening up look like? Marcy, let's start with the JCC, because that's many of those listening to the 6 of us this afternoon are members of the JCC. So they have lots of questions about the status of the JCC. So Marcy, can you talk about what does opening mean to the JCC, and specifically related to senior services, but maybe the JCC as a whole? What will that look like 30 days from now, 60 days from now? Because the building itself is still shut. And feel free to, activities are going on, which you're going to elaborate upon. So what does that look like going forward?
Well, as all of us, I think, we're not closed. We're just open in a very different way. It's online. But that being said, and I'm sure you all share this with me, the health and the safety of our constituency is most important. So as we work with the CDC, the Department of Health, and other relevant organizations, we're not going to open up on any level until we feel we have met certain criteria and that we have the staff in place to enforce those guidelines. That being said, it's kind of a soft opening right now, and it's very incremental. So some days, if you go by the parking lot at the JCC, you will start seeing fitness and wellness classes happening out in the parking lot under tents. and there is distance parking. There is distance that people have to keep from one another. We have safety ambassadors that are going to be there, that are going to take people's temperature, that are going to make sure they continue to, keep that safe distance, etc. So this is happening incrementally. Our soft opening, maybe this is a half of phase one, end of July, August 1st. The camps at Medford, which are 123 acres, usually have 1,600 campers. There's a lot of parents who are unhappy right now that those kids are not going to have that camp. That being said, there's going to be a number of options. Again, within the criteria of the amount of people, you can go as a family unit. You're going to have to make an appointment. You're going to have a part of the camp. You're going to have staff involved with you. There's going to be social distancing. There's going to be sanitization, whatever, but there will be some opportunities that you will be able to experience camp. With early childhood, they're having SCAMP, which is summer camp and school. They're thinking about maybe opening earlier in the year, maybe not the end of August, in August, but all of these, as we all know, you can make a plan today and it changes tomorrow because the COVID-19 situation changes. So I'm telling you all of this, this is what we're hoping. We're gonna have a station before when we do open the doors where people's temperatures are gonna be taken. If they've got a certain temperature, they're not gonna be able to enter. If they don't have masks, then we will have masks for them. We all know about all of this protocol. And so obviously we're working on all of it. When it comes to our older adult population and our special needs population, of which is under my umbrella, they're our most vulnerable. They will be the ones most reticent to come back to any of our community organizations regardless. So as a result, we are ramping up our online programming. Our film festival that was supposed to be in March is going to be a summer series throughout the summer. Our Arts, Books, and Culture Festival, we're going to be having authors starting to come now. But that all is reliant on our older adults and our special needs adults to be able to access technology. And that is our largest barrier. We had a meeting yesterday, Robin and I, with other colleagues about transportation, and reaching our guys through technology is a huge, huge barrier. So I have some grants out and I'm looking into funding to get something called a Grand Pad, which is an iPad that is specifically designed for older adults, and it can be operated by their loved ones, and they can actually monitor and help them off-site to manage how to use this iPad. So we're going to help them to be better equipped to deal with the new online world. That being said, we make 100 plus calls a week. We have 2,000 plus members. We're going to be going out socially distancing. We're going to be doing porch visits starting in July. So they'll come out on their porch. We'll be in our cars, outside of our cars, just connecting with them, assessing their situation, see if they're hooked up to resources. This is all a plan. This is all in process. It is all in evolution. And we are hoping that as older adults continue to come back to our programming, we will be there for them, but we are trying to be very realistic. We know they're going to take their time. We don't want them to not be connected. We don't want them to be isolated. So we're finding every single way that we can find to keep them connected and slowly have them come back.
Great. So it's clear that it's a work in progress, and the JCC clearly has become more than the building itself, which has been a pillar of the community for decades. There one on the west side, and of course 10 plus, 20 plus years on the east side of Cherry Hill. Mm-hmm. Rabbi Green, speaking of pillars of the community, you are one of them, no doubt, in the Jewish community, but I was more referring to this building, synagogue buildings itself, no offense. Can you talk about how, in your position as the head of the Tri-County Board of Rabbis, how has Judaism had to reinvent itself? And can you talk about synagogue life becoming more than the building itself? And Bethel, and of course just the entire Jewish community as a whole?
Sure. I think it's important to say that synagogue life and Jewish communal life was never about buildings, even when buildings were the spaces of that convening. And that now those spaces are digital spaces that for regular worship and for Jewish learning and other opportunities, because it's unsafe to gather large groups of people together, we've moved to online resources, which interestingly has opened synagogue life in many respects to lots of people who might not have easy access to a building normally. We have about 150 people that log on every weekend for our Sabbath services. Every evening, we have over 50 people, 50 or 60 people typically, coming together for our daily minyan. When we had daily minyan in our chapel at the building, it was closer to 10, 15 people on a regular basis. And so we see that this has been a touch point for people to connect with one another and to feel less socially isolated through that communal convening that's in a digital space. That said, I right now am in my office in our building at the synagogue, and there are others that come here but retain distance from one another, and being able to teach from a space or to be able to preach from our sanctuary, even to an empty crowd that is then broadcast to people who are in their homes, makes people feel close to a space that reminds them of that sense of sanctuary, of that sense of communal closeness, of the holiness that we ascribe to our synagogue spaces. One of the things that we've seen, not just in Bethel, but throughout Jewish movements and Jewish congregational life in this nation and in Israel during this time, is a shift of Jewish learning to a virtual space, and also recently innovations in being able to convene prayer in a socially distanced way. So, for example, some of the Orthodox congregations in our community are having regular daily services and have now for a number of weeks, where 10 men who are pre-assigned, who have RSVP'd essentially to be present for a minyan, show up in a parking lot and park in specific spaces distant from one another, but close enough that they can stand next to their car, see one another, hear one another, and offer their prayer together as a community. One of the things that differentiates the Orthodox world from the non-Orthodox world in congregational life right now is that most non-Orthodox movements have created space within their understandings of Jewish law to allow for the digital space to be open, both for use in traditional prayer and for convening prayers that are typically only done with a prayer quorum of 10, and also to be able to use the digital space for not sure, lost my train of thought there for a moment, sorry. But one of the things that the Orthodox space does not allow in their halakhic, oh, and also for Sabbath observance is the other thing, right? The Orthodox community, for the most part, doesn't use computers, electronics, and so forth in their understanding of Sabbath worship, and because of that, has been more eager to create in-person and in spaces where they can convene. So Torah Links in our community, for example, has 2 Saturday morning services, an early one and a later one, each that are limited in the number of people that gather outside for prayer, one after another. They're both able to hear the rabbi preach and so forth, and that's happening in person. Most of the non-Orthodox institutions are not convening in person, and I suspect that even as the governor is allowing greater possibilities for reopening, there's a concern that there are lots of people right now who are connecting through the digital space who wouldn't be able to and would be at high risk to connect in person. And so I think there's a cautiousness to jump into reopening all of our spaces for everyone.
Is it, doctor, but you are a rabbinical doctor, but Rabbi Green, is it fair to say, and again, I'm a member of, full disclosure, I'm a proud member of Congregation Bethel.
We're proud to have you.
Excuse me?
I said we're proud to have you.
I haven't been kicked out of the tribe yet, so that's good to know. But but in all seriousness, is it fair to say, and I'm not specifically speaking of Congregation Bethel, I'm talking Judaism in general, at least in the United States, that some of that digital technology may remain in place even beyond COVID, whatever that means as well?
So I suspect that some of it will remain and other things won't be. One of the things right now that I find in my work and in communication and convening with my colleagues on the Tri-County Board of Jewish Clergy is that clergy are working a lot right now. In fact, many of us feel like we're working more hours than we were before the pandemic because of all the different efforts that go into creating the virtual programs that our community members are able to enjoy. And to be able to do that requires a lot of time and demands filming and setup and so forth. But once we have all of the other in-person activities that we were doing before, it may be difficult to continue to do all of the different kinds of things that we're doing online. At the same time, I think there's increased interest and connection of people with their communities. We have congregants who aren't in South Jersey physically right now because of when the pandemic happened. They were in Florida. They've moved recently to other places, but they feel that this is their community and they're still logging into our programs, and we want to be able to create a space for them to connect. Right now, our congregation does a video every day that is emailed out to congregants, and that is just a few minutes of Torah inspiration to be able to elevate people everywhere they are. I don't know when that will cease or if that will ever cease, because it's something that's been so meaningful to so many people, and it doesn't take the same effort necessarily as all of the different steps that go into putting together a 1.5 hour service that we might do online, for example.
Personally, as a Congregation Bethel member, I love, not so much, Chazan's great. I personally love Rebecca Burrow. Hearing Rebecca Burrow on Friday evening service, I think that's great. I look forward to that every Friday evening, personally. Chazan's fantastic. Rebecca's just as good. So, Dr. Kavuta, we talked about the some of the opening up, and Marcy talked about the JCC and specifically related to seniors, because most of your patients are geriatric patients, and Rabbi Green talked about what Judaism will look like possibly coming back together, specifically with the Orthodox community, because they have not fully embraced technology as maybe the Reform and Conservative movements have. But let's talk about, I have an 80-year-old mother, and what risk, what if that was your patient, what would you tell that patient or that child on behalf of that 80-year-old mother, as how to protect themselves? Should they go out? Should they not go out? Should they go to that tent at the JCC? Should they have a tailgate Friday night service in Bethel's parking lot? Whatever it's going to look like. I'm just making stuff up as we go. But what would you say to that 50-some-year-old child for that 80-year-old mother?
Okay, well, thanks, Jerry. I want to thank you and Jen and Lauren and the JCC for having me. But I also would just, when you talk about that question, it's a very, very broad question, because I think it may pertain particularly to maybe what you may have a young 80-year-old, or you may have an 80-year-old that has a lot of complex chronic problems like diabetes, COPD, heart failure. There are some 80-year-olds out there that are on almost no medications, that they're able to do a lot. They're caring for themselves, and they're very active outside the house. So I think sometimes it really depends on the situation. You really do want to, at best, always consider the safety for your relative and for yourself. So I think the CDC has the recommendations to wear a mask out in public, and that's not an unreasonable request, as well as social distancing. Do I say stay home? I don't. If you feel that your relative is in good health and doesn't have a lot of these chronic disease problems, then I would think that there should be allowed some level of social distance, socialization, because socialization is much better than isolation. And the patients that I see are already socially distanced and isolated, because they're already, for most of them, because I do home care medicine, and home care medicine by definition from Medicare is the patient that is a taxing effort to leave the home. So there is already some physical problem, malady, illness that prevents them from on a regular basis doing their activities outside the home. And it's not just age related. It's any person and anybody that has a health issue that is a taxing effort to leave the home. So I see a lot of people and they may have the same illnesses as an 80-year-old and they may be 40. So I mean, that question is so broad, and I would think you need to then look to the individual situation and assess that for yourself and for your family. Social distancing is, I think, still important. I think we don't know if we all are isolating ourselves and social distancing ourselves and keeping safe. That's like an expression of love, saying that I want to be safe for you and my family and anyone around me. And I think that's important too, that your care and concern for your relative should be a prime concern. And that risk, you assume you have to think about that risk that you want to take to yourself and to your family. So I don't know that I have one set answer. I think it's based on an individual person and how you feel, and your family person, your significant, if it's your mom, family, your children even, do you want to put them at risk right now? And right now there is a emergence of the COVID virus going across the country from Memorial Day, having social, I think they were just socializing and not particularly wearing masks and things like that. And now there's a resurgence out in the lower southern states into Arizona. That's a concern. So if we let our guard up, are we going to face that same problem again? And that certainly is affecting out in certain states already again, given it's been a couple weeks from Memorial Day, and that's how this virus happens. And we don't have a cure. We don't even have at this particular point in time a standard of care to offer someone in terms of treating them. It's still all experimental. So those are concerns.
Thank you for those thoughts. And Jen Levy, I think, it's a balance. It's a risk utility analysis. As Dr. Cavuto, what's your degree of risk to go to the JCC for outdoor activities, to attend some form of an in-person religious service or ritual, which we'll come back to some of those issues shortly. But I guess from my perspective as an advocate for seniors and their caregiver children, I'm concerned with the collateral damage, specifically related to isolation, depression, because I'm not just talking about the financial collateral damage. I'm not referring to the impact that the quarantine has had on the economy, which is devastating, especially for small businesses, et cetera. I'm talking about the psyche of the JCC senior members, those in assisted living, independent living, nursing homes. Because from my mind, and again, this might be a strong opinion, if COVID's not going to kill them, the isolation will eventually. It's devastating. And there's been studies on this. And there has to be a balancing act. In long-term care communities today, it's no, 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 no. What I mean by that is pretty much a total ban on visitation. So that 55-year-old child cannot visit in person that 85-year-old parent who's in independent living, assisted living, or nursing home. Window visits have become the rage. Obviously, FaceTime, virtual meetings, Zoom meetings, etc. But we as humans are social animals. The value of that human touch and that human interaction is priceless in every aspect, specifically those with dementia. So can you touch upon that, what's going on, since you're a consultant to long-term care communities, Jennifer? Can you touch upon where we are today? Because I know that several of the attendees today have a loved one in some type of long-term care setting, Lionsgate or otherwise. Can you touch upon where we are and where we're going?
Sure, and that's such an important question, and I'm glad that you raised it. You know, like every other line of business, the long-term care facilities and assisted living facilities have also been handed their set of opening criteria to start to get back to our new normal. You know, we have to remember when this all came about back in March, we were all kind of in crisis mode, trying to figure out how we keep our loved ones safe. You know, we didn't really understand COVID, and we don't have, to Dr. Cavuto's point earlier, treatments or, you know, pre-done protocols to treat this. So when you look at assisted living and long-term care residents that are living in congregate living, that have multiple disease pathways and are definitely at much more risk, you know, I think what you saw over the first couple months was the extreme, like you said, no visitation, and that even meant from a lot of our professional staff that would typically come in to care for these patients. Now what's starting to happen is, you know, we're starting to watch the trends as testing has become more available in these skilled environments. You know, we're starting to test more routinely. So as we, you know, we can be more proactive in that care, and then ultimately start to look at different ways to think out of the box to provide that social engagement that you're referring to. You know, when you talk about depression and anxiety and all of those other, you know, diagnoses that come with it, you know, our psychology and psychiatry professionals that are in our industry are also working on telehealth and different ways to reach out, number one, to make sure that our loved ones are getting that type of care that they need in counseling. But more importantly, we're looking at different ways to provide recreational visits. I actually saw online in another state where, like, when we go to the supermarkets now and you have the barriers in between, you know, in between the cashier and the consumer. Now they're looking at those types of barriers where maybe the loved one can go outside and there is a barrier between family member or visitors and, again, you know, the patient. And again, that might seem a little strange initially because that's not how we were socially engaged, you know, prior to all of this. But when you talk about our loved ones being able to get outside, you know, be closer, actually be a little more physically, you know, engaged with their loved ones, there's definitely different, you know, there's this new normal that we're all looking to get to. And, you know, the nursing homes and assisted living are all working with their collaborative teams to put those programs in place.
Well, thank you. And you know, it's so much easier to say yes or no, and it's, I mean, there's no choice to make. It's pretty much a one or the other. But now we have choices, and that makes life much more difficult, and actually probably may even brings in some ways even more anxiety to an individual. Because should I go out? Well, my friends are going out. My friends told me to go. My spouse doesn't want me to go, and if I go out and I see this person, she says I can't be home for 3 weeks. That's my wife, but it's all good in the end. So, but anyway, I don't want to bring my own Michigas into this, of course. So, but Robin, in your role in home care at Olive, you know, what are you seeing out there with your patients, the family members, the home care in the community? What are you hearing out there when you talk to families? What is their concern? And what are the concern of your caregivers? And where are you with COVID, and where is it going?
So we like to say we never stopped, you know, we just kept going and going, and we had to change some of our day-to-day ways because of COVID and adjust. Clearly, you know, the PPE now is a huge component of home care, but the aides and the clients are really becoming, if anything, I like to you know, make lemonade out of lemons, and they are becoming very closer than ever. They are the link to the family. So the home health aides have you know, their phones or an iPad and can actually FaceTime with families. So if they're not able to go out to see them, they are certainly able to face-to-face contact through, you know, technology. The other aspect of this is the only human contact some of our clients have had are the home health aides. So the home health aides have now, they are no longer just employees of theirs, they are actually family. They've gotten them through a crisis. And so in many cases, the aides have given them the confidence that we're all going to get through this together, and we're going to slowly progress through the process. Now, you know, we're all going to follow the CDC guidelines and the Department of Health, And some families are going to have much more uncertainty and feel a little bit more nervous. And then there are some families who were not able to see or their family member or live out of town, and they really needed to rely on us. And so we adjust our, their needs is how we adjust what we'll do for them. So, our aides are getting tested, they're COVID tested, and there's rules now with senior communities and various different home care agencies have rules. I mean, getting tested every 2 weeks and making sure that the home health aides are clear, making sure that, we're keeping our clients, our home health aides up to date on where we've heard there's, been an outbreak of COVID. But the goal is to really follow the guidelines, but enhance our clients' lives even during this pandemic. And although I know we can't forget that it's happening, but they still have life to live, and I want them to continue living that great life. So if we are providing activities for them at home, coming out with different kits for them to be entertained, even if they can't go out. And even with the adult day center, of which obviously that component we had to close, although we had just opened it, we closed it a couple months later. For the short term, we're going to be reopening, God willing. And what we're going to do is, sooner rather than later, we're going to have appointments, and we're going to have kind of a drop off for senior citizens, elderly, or anybody that wants to just get out but be in a place for 2 hours, and it's just them one-on-one with somebody, so that they can do activities and we can entertain them. Because like you said, Jerry, there's nothing more important than their mental status, and we want them to feel fulfilled, and we want them to enjoy their life. And I believe we can do that even with the restrictions that have been placed on us and will continue to be placed on us for quite some time. But we can do it safely by enhancing their lives, bringing them to the day center, or even just having the home health aides or us providing various activities and doing Zoom activities as well for them, whether it's book reviews or whatever it might be. But we're very fortunate that our staff got to go into their homes. We got to see what it was like. I feel as though we almost could write a book about the different experiences that everyone felt and had during this time. But while it's been a challenging ride, and I believe it's going to be, I think we have all learned a lot, and we've learned a lot about people. So for that, I'm grateful.
And I would not only learn a lot of people, you've learned a lot about yourself too.
Yeah.
And that's just as important. That, there's good in this, and everyone learned about themselves, how to deal with a crisis, what really matters. What have you done? I mean, this is a rhetorical question, but what have you done over the past 90 days? How much time have you spent with your family? Because now you have the opportunity to do things you didn't normally do. And so we've learned about ourselves too, and we're going to come out better for it as a person as well. That then we can be a better father, we can be a better parent, we can be a better caregiver, we can be a better son, a better daughter, and a better employer, however you want, a better congregant, a better rabbi, however you want to, so there is some good in this, certainly. Laura, do we have any questions from the attendees?
We do. So one question was, I believe this is more directed to Dr. Cavuto. What are your thoughts on facility visitation? The thought of putting people in a plexiglass box does not seem like it would be able to help elders with anxiety.
That's a really good point. I'm starting to see some the ALFs doing maybe some activities where they're bringing them, not with the family, but the ones that are healthy enough, they put them outside, say on a terrace, and have them watch a video outside, social distance with 6 foot in between them. And that's actually kind of nice, where they're getting some fresh air, getting outside. I think actually being outside and maybe finding an environment where they could sit outside, maybe have a sign-up list or something where maybe they can do 2 or 3 different family members, different groups at a time, allowing them some time to have some face-to-face time, obviously with a mask, and possibly like 6 foot social, distancing themselves to be able to see that family member. I don't know that at this point that you would really, I don't think that they're going to open up where you could actually, like, say, physically touch the patient or their relative, but I think having some kind of communication is absolutely vital. And one of the big issues that we've had is just being able to, from my perspective, being out and trying to take care of their patients has been to actually see them. And for a while there, for a couple of weeks there, we were basically reinventing everything and changing the entire office, trying to find a telehealth that would work because a lot of our people don't even have up-to-date phones. So it's hard to even do like a video conference. So there have been some real challenges. So what I have seen with Robin, like saying, having tablets where the caregiver allows face-to-face time, that's very, very comforting to the relative and the family member. And I find from both ends that it's very rewarding to see where they're using the tablets that way, where they're actually FaceTiming or having some kind of way that they can communicate and see each other is very rewarding for the family. So just basically doing that has been a comfort for both the senior involved as well as the family member. So I think that's a really wonderful tool. And perhaps maybe they, since the weather's nice, they can lean towards maybe doing some more activities outside. And maybe, like Marcy said, they were doing some things with tents. Maybe they, some of the facilities that have been tested negative, because they are employing that as state mandated. They're doing testing weekly until your building is clear. And perhaps when we have a nice, safe environment, and we know that they can do some social distancing, that would be great. The problem I see are patients with dementia, and you're asking them to wear a mask. I really don't see a dementia patient being able to put the mask on and keep it on there. And so that's a challenge. I can see that being a challenge. But in the more independent ALFs, possibly doing some outside activity may not be unreasonable. So, and keeping the distance and wearing a mask. So definitely, I don't think they're going to be able to do an in-community visit at this point, but perhaps with taking advantage of some of the good weather, if this all looks stable, possibly finding a way, so maybe some of the ALFs can find some way of finding a kind of an activity that could be brought outside in a safe manner for both the loved one as well as the person visiting.
Thank you. Laura, any other questions from the attendees?
Yes, there's a couple. So in respect to activities, Harvey asked what the panel's opinion of senior citizens playing cards together. What are your thoughts on that happening, considering they are in the year of like 80 years of age or older?
Marcy, I'm going to throw that to you, since that some activities of senior activities at JCC.
Well, actually, there's a lot of online. You can, especially, well, and for Harvey, I think I know who it is. I'm not sure he plays Mahjong or Canasta, but there's a lot of that going online. And, people can just contact me and I can send to them the links, and you can actually play with your friends online. So for Harvey, I don't know whether he's talking about bridge or whatever, but one of the things that we're also going to be doing through our lifelong learning classes is we have a contact with a woman who does all of pretty much our bridge, our Canasta Mahjong, and she's going to have classes, or what we can do is maybe Harvey and his friends can actually just come on the Zoom call, and they may not need the instruction, but they might be able to still play cards online. I am certainly not going to take a medical position in all of this. That's Dr. Cavuto's place, in which, if they can maintain those 6 feet of distance, I don't know. But nonetheless, I mean, there are things that they can certainly do online, and they can just connect with me at mlahav@jfedsnj.org, and I can connect them with those things.
Thank you. To the panel, we touched upon it before. Let's talk about social isolation that unfortunately all of us have experienced. I mean, I'm sitting in my office And Rabbi Green, you're sitting in your office, I believe. It's dead. You know, there's no one around. It's really depressing to us. When I look around, and I'm the only one here. You know, there's a reason why solitary confinement is used as punishment. There's a reason for that. So, but let's talk about the loss of maybe rituals. I mean, well, Jewish rituals specifically a bit. And I mean, rituals can come in so many forms. There's religious rituals, there's secular rituals. There's reasons why 70,000 Eagles fans pack Lincoln Financial Field, even though they probably can watch it better on TV, because we're social animals. So, Rabbi Green, over the past 90 days, can you talk about the loss of rituals, be it births, be it funerals, be it brises, be it weddings, bar bat mitzvahs, any type of mitzvot? And what's that mean, and how are we to reinvent ourselves? What happened, and of course, still going forward.
So before I speak about the particulars of rituals, I want to bring us back to the beginning of the Torah, because I think that's where kind of the core element of what we're talking about comes from within our tradition, which is that in the creation narrative, we have two important expressions. One is that when God creates humanity, humanity is created in B'Tselem Elohim, which means in the divine image. And because of that idea that every person is a reflection of the holiness of the one who created us all, that each of us, therefore, is deserving of infinite dignity, and each of our lives has infinite worth, the Jewish legal tradition built this idea to protect life, and that, in fact, any other Jewish principle, any other Jewish law, for the most part, with very few exceptions, can be violated in order to save life. This is one of the reasons that even in ultra-Orthodox congregations, doctors are wearing pagers on the Sabbath, because they know that if they're called upon, they're going to jump in a car and go to the hospital, because they can violate all those things that they normally wouldn't do on the Sabbath in order to save a life. And just a few verses away from that is the expression shortly before God creates a partner for the first person, that it says for the first time, the words lo tov, it's not good. Lo tov adam hayot levado. It's not good for a person to be alone. And it's a reflection on the fact that loneliness and isolation is something that is profoundly degrading of the dignity of people. And that's one of the other things that we're responding to it the same way, that we want to simultaneously protect life and also ensure that that life is one filled with dignity and filled with interaction that helps life be filled with meaning. And what ritual is, every ritual is about creating meaning of moments that otherwise might not be meaningful. It's about creating sense of the awe and wonder that comes in experiencing and witnessing new life and welcoming new life into the world in birth rituals. And not long ago, I officiated a Brit Milah, but I did so over a video conference like we're communicating now. And the only person that was with the baby, other than his immediate family, his parents and his brother, was the mohel, who was very sanitized, temperatured, masked, etc., who was actually doing the circumcision cut. But I gave the baby his name, our chazan was on and sang songs for the baby. Lots of other relatives and friends were there to celebrate through this virtual space, to be able to welcome that new life. And similarly, we see in other life cycle events, the transition as a person emerges from youth to adulthood, and we celebrate a bar or bat mitzvah. I can tell you that many of my colleagues are doing bar and bat mitzvahs in their living rooms via Zoom and other video conferencing formats, and others are choosing to postpone these ceremonies to a time when people will be able to gather, or some are doing them in backyards where they can have a larger group of people spaced in a safe way during being able to honor the achievement of this child. And that there are so many other rituals as well in the Jewish space and outside of it, right? The birthday ritual, which is a ritual of people who care for somebody, gathering around them, blowing out candles, consuming cake together, right? These rituals aren't happening in the same way that they were happening before because of the dangers of convening. But we found these car parades where people drive by and wave to wish Mazel Tov on somebody's graduation and to express love for somebody on their birthday. Gatherings that are embodied, but that, again, through a window of a vehicle where someone isn't going to have any contagion of the virus, are able to show somebody how loved they are, and that make that moment a moment of meaning. Most weddings that I know of have postponed parties. Some are choosing to get married at the dates that they initially planned, and others are postponing with the hopes that after a vaccine is well distributed, they'll be able to have the wedding that they had imagined. And I think probably most dramatic and least schedulable are funerals, which have changed significantly. And from the experience as someone who's officiated funerals during this time, I can tell you that now going to a funeral is frequently a clergy person, a person from the mortuary who has a phone or another device that is recording and streaming, and the closest relatives of the person who is deceased. And typically no one else, and that we take turns while remaining socially distanced from one another, speaking into the camera, so that all of these other people who are invested in the life of this person and want to show support and offer comfort to those who are mourning are able to, as fully as possible, experience this ritual. I have by my car, in my trunk now, a shovel, because the mortuaries don't want to use their shovels for risk of contagion. So I have a shovel that I bring and gloves that I bring so that people that are there can bury their loved one, which is part of our traditional ritual of mourning. And so you can see there are these different adaptations to rituals, but I don't think that the rituals have fundamentally shifted in a way that people won't want to revert, because so many of Jewish rituals and so many secular rituals as well are fundamentally social, right? Yelling Happy New Year at midnight when the year changes and it's January 1st, and staying up late on December 31st is a social ritual, because you know that you're doing it and everyone else around you is doing it too. And if you go outside and yell at that moment, you'll see fireworks going off and all sorts of other things, and that doesn't happen other nights. It will be interesting to see if the virus isn't contained by then, what Halloween looks like in this country come October, what other rituals in the Jewish space and outside of it look like.
One thing that was really cool, and again, it's different moments that matter. And I tend to be a glass half full person. So I want to go around the bend, if for those who are old enough, the Partridge Family. I mean, I'm sorry, Partridge. They're pretty much bored here. We're just missing Alice in the middle. So, but you know, one of the cool things for over Pesach, we were still early in this, April 10th, 11th, something like that. You know, and myself and my neighbors, my family, we went outside at like 8 o'clock in the evening, and we socially distanced on our front stoop, and there was a half dozen neighbors in the area at their front stoop. And as a family, my children, we all sang Ma Nishtana Halayla Hazeh. And it was all over, and that was pretty cool, and that was pretty moving. It's something we wouldn't normally experience in a good way. We are one community, and although we cannot pray together, we cannot say the 4 questions all together, and we cannot drink wine, which is a very social, happy occasion. It's a good thing, and I've always and so there's good things that happen. And to address what you just said, Rabbi, I like the expression, I've heard it several times during this pandemic: you never delay happiness. And it's so true. So let's end by just going around the horn, so to speak. Tell me in 1 minute or less, tell me something good here. Tell me what you would take out of this in a good way. Robin, let's start with you.
I think there's a lot, actually. One of the things I would say is simplicity. I think we have appreciated the simple things now in life, because those material items don't matter as much. It's being with people. It's our own families. And for me, as far as with Passover, I was very fortunate to be able to FaceTime with my family in Pittsburgh and my sister and her family in New York. And we went through the entire Seder on FaceTime. And We wouldn't normally do that, but it was very special to us. So we've all, I feel like we've learned that you make things work, and that everything will make it work. Even if it's not the way that we're used to, we have to sometimes compromise and just realize sometimes we can't control everything, and that's okay, but we can make things okay for our families and for everybody else. And most importantly, just caring and realizing the relationships that can be built. Even remotely, I have enjoyed getting to know people through Zoom, actually, that I otherwise would have never met. So there have been wonderful opportunities for me to connect with people that I'm grateful for. And I think our relationships will last a lifetime. And I'm fortunate for this opportunity.
Jen, we're running out of time. Thank you, Robin. 1 minute or less. Tell me something good.
I've learned to slow down a lot and to really value my family, value my friends, and really realize how important life is and the relationships that surround me. Because life changes in an instant. And, you know, it's important to take that step back and to love and to appreciate and to live in the moment, because sometimes that moment isn't there again. And so for me, I'm just really blessed and grateful for my friends and family and the time that I can spend with them.
Thank you. Dr. Kavuta.
Okay, so I do appreciate everything that everyone is saying, because they're all so true. Friends, family, being connected. And when I think about it, is that if this had happened at any other time, we have the access of video of where we're doing this today. At any other time, this would never have happened. So I have really learned to appreciate the value of all of our children, our grandchildren, our families, just the times that we have been together. So it makes so much more important the next time that we actually get together. And I think that is an important, like we just appreciate, like Jen said, the simple things, just being simple and just learning to appreciate the value of each other. And I really feel that has happened even with the patients that I see, that we really appreciate the times that we do, either by telehealth or with full PPE, we go out to the patient's home. It just feels different. They're almost like my family, as opposed to a patient that I'm taking care of, because we're here together working through this, and it just changes everything. I feel like everything's changed. Being with each other has changed. The fact that we're able to do this today it's a great thing, that we're able to share some of our experiences, just being able to reach out to each other and know that this is, we're helping each other just by, having this exchange. And I feel that when I get together with my family, that's the same thing. I just feel so much more connected, and I feel so much more connected to my patients because of the value that each of us have brought to the table.
Thank you. Rabbi Green, tell me something good.
Shabbat. Shabbat is the idea that once a week, once every 7 days, we step out of whatever our regular routine is and be able to evaluate ourselves, surround ourselves with those that we cherish most, and enjoy ourselves. And I think that one of the things that's challenging during this time is that for so many people, each day looks like the previous day, and there's a dreariness to that. And that one of the gifts of our tradition is the idea of Shabbat, of a sabbatical, of stepping out and being able to celebrate and connect. And I know that as somebody who works in the Jewish space and as a synagogue rabbi, usually my Shabbats either happened very early, or by the time I got home on a Friday night, my kids were in bed. But for the last number of weeks, every week in this pandemic, I've had Shabbat dinner with my children and my wife, and that's been beautiful. And we've been able to celebrate and rest and really reflect and have the kind of Shabbat that I hope everyone is able to have. Related to what you shared, Jerry, on my parents' block in Los Angeles, every Friday night, about a couple dozen people pop out of their homes at 6 o'clock. One family lights candles, another leads Kiddush, another does motzi, and they all socially distanced bring in Shabbat together. And that crosses denominational movements. And it's a beautiful thing that's brought people together and that's created new rituals. And if you are looking for a ritual to help give space, give meaning to this time, which feels sometimes meaningless, I can't help but recommend that you make Shabbat in your life, that you light candles, drink wine, eat good bread and food, and surround yourself virtually or in person with the people that you cherish most.
Thank you, Rabbi. We're gonna end where we started. I'm gonna throw it to you, Marcy. Something good, and then feel free to finish up.
I ditto what everyone said. So I'm going to take it to the professional level because you all spoke personally and so beautifully. This morning with my colleagues from Jewish Family Children's Services and Lionsgate, every month for 3+ years now, we've had Cafe Connection, which is a memory cafe for people with severe memory loss and their care partners. Since the pandemic, we've been doing it on Zoom. And when we started, I can't hear, I can't turn it on, I can't see you. And now, these few weeks later, they know how to mute themselves. They actually, one woman we had a singing performer today. One woman, when he said the song, she went on her phone. Obviously, she was a care partner, and she found the lyrics on the phone so she and her husband could sing along with that. We've had people from Boston, we've had people from Florida, we've had people who didn't feel well who came online to our programs. The good side of all of this is even though we don't have the personal touch, we are still connecting in all of our respective ways, and we're never too old to learn, me included. Who knew what Zoom was? I certainly didn't. So it has been beautiful to watch 85-year-olds learn new technology and still be with their loved ones who they're caretaking and still have a community to be a part of.
Thank you.
So I think I'm supposed to round this up. I cannot thank you enough. To our audience out there, thank you so much. We are all available to you all the time. Now there's updates. Laura is our boss behind the scenes. She's the best. I don't know if you're going to move to other screens or whatever, but we are all a phone call away and an email away, and we are here for you, whether we're a lawyer, whether we're a doctor, whether we're a rabbi, whether we're home health, whether we're a consultant. This is what's going on and coming up at the JCC, catsjcc.org. You don't have to memorize all of this. There's things for everybody. There's room for everybody, all ages, all abilities. We're all here for you.
And
Thank
all
you
on,
so
and all on the website, obviously.
And it's all on the website. And I think, Laura, the next one is going to be the upcoming panels that we're having. Again, for all of you who attended, I can send all of these screens to you and thanking you for attending. And you'll see we have one coming up July 9th. Healthcare needs did not stop during this pandemic. What to do now? Thursday, August 8th, what's going on in your ER with COVID-19. And Thursday, September 10th, legislative updates on COVID-19, what the state needs you to know. And what the state needs you to know is that in November, vote. That was bipartisan. It's just important for your voice to be heard. First time in my life, I have had to do it by mail. And so we have that option, but your voice counts and we're here to listen. Thank you all panelists. You were great. Thank you attendees.
Thank you all.
Thank you.